But her father was piling sticks on the fire, and her mother was busy cleaning the grouse the boatmen had brought in. Judith fetched a pot of water, wondering if Mr. Larne had looked at her like that because he thought she was pretty. She was 15, old enough to want to be pretty, but her father said she was too young to be concerned with adornment, and as she had never seen a mirror larger than 6 inches by 8, it was hard to form much opinion of her looks. She knew she had eyes that were brownish gold like her hair, and her complexion was all right except for being sunburned. But glancing down at her gray cotton gown and her plain kerchief, she found it hard to believe that a gentleman in satin and silver could notice her with admiration. Judith looked disapprovingly at the nut-colored garments of Caleb and her father. They had seemed very tidy and proper back home in Connecticut, but at home, all decent farmers dressed like that, except when they rode to meeting or to market on holidays. She wondered where Mr. Larne came from. "Mother," she said suddenly. Mrs. Sheramy looked up from the grouse. "Yes, child?" "That Mr. Larne," said Judith. He's traveling all by himself, and maybe he spoke to us because he was lonesome. He's tied up his boat just the other side of the canebrake. Don't you think it might be nice if we asked him to have supper with us?" "Why, yes," said Mrs. Sheramy after an instant's hesitation. She turned to her husband. "What do you think, Mark?" Mark leaned on his gun. "I hardly know," he returned slowly. "He doesn't look like very good company to me." "Why, Father!" cried Judith. "He looks like a lord." Mark smiled slightly. "More like a good-for-nothing dandy. I've seen his kind, cluttering up the colonies and making trouble for thrifty folk trying to establish homesteads and live in fear of the Lord." Judith jabbed a spoon into the succotash. "It's positively unchristian of you to think hard of a gentleman just because he's all dressed up." "Judith," said her father. "I'm sorry, sir." She bit her lip, but she was gladly surprised to hear her mother say, "After all, Mark, if the poor man has had nobody but those rough boatmen to cook for him all the way down the river, he must be starved for a woman's hand about his food. Why shouldn't we ask him to supper?" Mark shrugged. "Very well. Go ask him over, Judith." "Yes, sir." Judith hurried to push a path through the canes. The sun was slanting rapidly, but the stalks had a faint sparkle as she shoved them away. On the other side of the break, she stopped, quivery with sudden shyness. Philip Larne was sitting on the knotted root of a tree. His gun across his knees, he was watching the sky for game while his boatmen built a fire. Judith felt tongue-tied. He was not their sort. Asking him to supper seemed a feat requiring intimacy with courts and ballrooms. She might have fled in silence if he had not at that moment caught sight of her and sprung to his feet, laying his gun against a tree. "Ma charmin' semi-acquaintance," he greeted her. He came up and kissed her hand. Nobody had ever kissed her hand before. Judith curtsied in a flutter of embarrassment. I beg your pardon, sir, but my mother sends her compliments and wants to know if you'll have supper with us tonight." Philip Larne's blue eyes swept her up and down, and though his answer was all grace, his lips twitched with amusement. "I'm honored, ma'am." Then you'll come, Mr. Larne?" she asked tremulously, pushing back against the canes again. He began to laugh. "Wait a minute," he exclaimed, taking her arm to make sure that she did so. "You are positively trembling, Miss Sheramy. Do you think I'm an Indian hankering for your scalp?" "Of course not, but—" She hesitated, but he was so warmly friendly that before she knew it, she was laughing too. "I'm not very used to strangers," she confessed. "Then it's high time you got used to them," he retorted. "Aren't you moving into a brand new country? Come, sit down and talk to me." Judith drew back. "But I thought you were coming with me."